So I've seen some really lazy, shitty burlesque, and I've seen a lot of incredible stripping. And I've also seen performers who work in both, and people who like do burlesque on the weekends but work at the club during the week or whatever, and do the same act or similar kinds of acts. So I don't think it's as much of a binary. I saw the most like creative, artistic stripping that I think I've ever seen in my life at a strip club called Mary's. There isn't even a DJ. There's just a jukebox next to the stage, which is like 3 feet by 3 feet. It's so cool.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
I've told you about My One condoms and their 52 sizes. Now, I want to tell you about their newest innovation, One Flex. One Flex uses graphene to make ultra-thin condoms that increase body heat transfer for that true skin-on-skin feel. The only thing better than sex is flex sex. Use code MANWHORE at onecondoms.com for 20% off your purchase. That's ONE condoms.com, promo code MANWHORE.
Welcome to the Man-Whore Podcast.
Shout out to the strippers, tippers, and topless hamburger flippers. This is Billy Procida, and you're listening to the Man-Whore Podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening if you're nasty. Welcome to my weekly series of sex-positive conversations. I got a jam-packed one for you this week. First, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Ina Park. She's back on the pod to update you about something in the medical news that may concern you and your sexual health. After that, I've got a full conversation with burlesque dancer and newly published author, Fancy Feast. Her book, Naked, is out now, available wherever you purchase your books. All that and more for you in just a few bits. But first, show dates, people, show dates. The Naked Comedy Show, it's coming up. Yes, as featured in the New York Times, Time Out New York Channel 1, and the illustrious Bushwick Daily. The Naked Comedy Show is back at Hacienda. October 20th, we got 8 p.m., 10 p.m. shows. There is a link at the top of the show notes, commonly referred to as the schnotes. BYOB, clothing optional. Hope to see you there. I've also got a couple spots coming up at the Grizzly Pear down on McDougal Street. I've also got those show dates and a link to those tickets as well as others in the schnotes. The show notes, you know, where everything you could possibly need while I continue to delay making a proper website. Come on out to see some stand-up, all right? The Champagne Room, as many of you know, is our super free, super fun, super sex-positive Discord server. It's not a Man-Whore Podcast Discord server as much as it is a sex-positive Discord server, though we do have an episode discussion channel where you should all go to share your 2 to 5 cents on any one episode. There have been some good comments. The intros have been tighter lately, and I want to read just a few of these. Shoe Booty, responding to episode 505 with Elise Morales, she says, as I was catching up on my listening, I was shocked that you didn't get a +1 to your own sister's wedding. I was also shocked. As someone who just hosted a wedding, it is a party, and you make sure your guests have a good time. That includes allowing them to bring a date regardless of time together or official relationship status. I find it selfish that weddings are seen as this power play by a couple with phrases like, "It's my day." Thank you, Shoe Booty, for your support. I don't know if I agree if everyone should get a +1. That sounds like it could get expensive, but I do think like brother of the bride should get an unconditional one. Particularly if every single sibling and step-sibling is in a committed romantic relationship and got those as +1s. I just think you throw Billy a bone, again, if anything, to keep me away from your friends. You know what I do for work. You really want that coming up? Mr. Nathan J.W., he chimed in responding to episode 507 with Ellen Stagg, where I just, very offhandedly said, what even is a side? He was very kind to attach an article that defined it. So if you don't know, a side is someone who does not engage in anal sex basically in like gay relationships or male on male relationships. Most of us all know that there are tops. We know there are bottoms. There are also sides. And I just didn't realize that that's what that was. They're mostly about they just do everything, but it's kissing, hand jobs, rimming, BJs, just anything without a dick going into the ass. And now you know. Thank you, Nathan, for sharing that. And lastly, Tracy, respond to last week's episode 508. She comments, I really enjoyed you just answering questions about yourself. I know you thought everyone knows everything about you, but us newbies don't. So it was really fun to watch and listen to you do the podcast. Because I streamed myself recording that portion of last week's show in the Champagne Room for free for anyone to watch and listen to. Thank to all of y'all who drop into the episode discussion channel with your comments, with your thoughts, with your opinions about each week's show. And you can share your thoughts. You can join a variety of conversations. You can help us water a virtual tree at manwhorepod.com/Discord or click the link in the you know where schnotes. Dr. Ina Park, she was on episode 380 of the Man Whore podcast when she was promoting her book, Strange Bedfellows, Adventures in the Science, History, and Surprising Secrets of STDs. And I saw something in the news about doxycycline and the CDC, and I wanted to have her on to contextualize this because up until recording with her, I wasn't even sure how to pronounce cycline. Anyways, let's go learn a bit from Dr. Ina Park. Tell me if this sounds like you. Condoms, they don't feel good. They don't fit right. You can't stay hard in a condom. And you always seem to find yourself battling with your prospective lover about whether or not you're going to use a rubber. Okay, well, what if we took the rubber part out of it? My sponsor this week, One Flex, is the first ever condom made with a whole other material, graphene. Graphene is the strongest and thinnest material on Earth. It's 200 times stronger than steel. It's 1,000,000 times thinner than human hair. And I know graphene sounds like something you might buy at the Home Depot to like make or spackle or secure something in your home. But no, this is something that's going to secure your sperm and make sex feel great. These condoms increase body heat transfer by 85% compared to standard latex condoms. We got to use condoms, okay? We don't want to wake up, go into the bathroom, and it's burning. We don't want babies we did not intend on having. If you're having trouble staying hard in standard latex condoms, then you got to try graphene. You got to try One Flex at onecondoms.com/flex and enter the code MANWHORE for 20% off your purchase. One Flex is also available in select Walgreens stores nationwide.
Doxycycline. He doesn't know anything else about anything, but...
Yeah, doxycycline. That's the new Marvel hero, right?
Sounds like it, actually.
Well, Dr. Ina Park, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So I saw something in the news, made me think of you, and, I had questions, so I figured a lot of my audience might have questions if they've seen this. Recently, the CDC is looking into this drug, doxycycline, as kind of a morning after pill for certain STIs. Curiously enough, they're only maybe going to recommend it to certain populations. So could you tell us a little bit about what is doxycycline? What is it that the CDC is looking into? And how well am I pronouncing the name of this drug?
You are pronouncing the name of this drug brilliantly, Billy. And I will say that doxycycline, so for those listeners out there might be saying, hey, I've heard of that drug. Well, yeah, it's been around since the late 50s. So it's a drug for which we have a very long track record of use. And it's used very commonly for people who have acne. And it's used also for skin infections or respiratory infections. If you get like a pneumonia, for example, you can use doxycycline. And it's also used if you ever travel and have to take medication to prevent malaria, it's used there. So it's used for all, we should just put it in the water. You know what I mean? It's really good for lots of things. But the CDC put out this kind of preliminary guidance, and they're actually asking people to send in their comments. So it's available for public comment right now. whether or not, you think that you agree with their recommendations or not. And the recommendations right now would be to take this morning after pill of doxycycline, 200 milligrams actually, which will actually end up usually being 2 pills. And you take it anywhere up to 72 hours after you have unprotected sex. So any condomless sex, so that would be oral, vaginal, anal, then, anything that could transmit a bacterial STI like chlamydia, gonorrhea, or syphilis. So you could take it, let's say you have sex with someone and then you can take it 10 minutes later if you want to, but you do have a few days to take it, and sooner is better. And the reason why you'll see in CDC's recommendations, it's only recommended for men who have sex with men and transgender women. And that's not because it doesn't work in other male bodies or other people who are, born female. The drug doxycycline still works against infections, but for this particular use, which is a morning after pill for STIs, it's only really been studied and shown to be effective in men who have sex with men and transgender women. They studied it, only one study in cisgender women, and it did not show any difference than the usual kind of standard of care of just testing and treating when you got an infection. So there's no reason why it shouldn't work in anyone who takes it. But right now, the only information that we have to base recommendations on is on those populations that I mentioned, men who have sex with men and transgender women. So other, queer, non-binary folks, trans men, etc. Again, no information.
So it sounds like you answered one of my questions, which is like scientifically,
right,
there's not a good reason why these drugs wouldn't work well for anyone, but the recommendation comes from mostly just like the studies that exist for now. There are a lot of studies that go into, what they call men who have sex with men. There's a lot of studies that happen around like STIs in that community. So I get why we have this data. Mm-hmm. And I read that they tried it with cis women, but for some reason it just like couldn't hit. Like maybe they weren't being exposed as much to like chlamydia and gonorrhea.
Well, that's an interesting question. Like the folks, they did it in Kenya, and all of these women were also taking HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, which you may have heard of, Billy. But and a lot of them had an STI at baseline. So they thought, oh, maybe they're in the right networks. Like, you want, when you're doing a study like this, you want to be testing it in networks where people are actually going to be getting lots of STIs so that you can see whether or not the drug works, right? If you do it with in a group of like 50-year-old, hetero married people, probably you're not gonna be able to do the study, right? So that's the thing about doing the study in certain populations is, they think, there's going to be a high incidence of infection, so we'll be able to see whether or not it works quickly, right? So they thought that this population of women would actually, demonstrate some sort of like efficacy for the intervention. But what happened was, and they just did like a sub study of those women, and they actually took samples of their hair, and they were able to analyze whether or not there was doxycycline metabolites in there. And it looks like a little bit less than half of the women didn't have any doxycycline in their system at all. So what that means is that some of the women just didn't take it. Yeah, I think it works if you take it, but I can't prove it. So that's why the CDC won't say, okay, it's fine to use in cisgender women. It's fine to use in trans men. So we just don't have any information that it works in those populations. And in fact, the one study we have in women actually demonstrated that it didn't work. But I think it's because a lot of the women didn't actually take the drug because
if you're participating in these studies, I mean, come on, like opt out or do follow the instructions. Maybe I was just a rule follower. I was called a herb a lot in high school, but like do the thing.
Sometimes people want to sign up for your study because you might be paying them, right? Or there might be other benefits of being in the study, like you're getting free healthcare, you're getting all these other perks, but maybe you're not actually really interested in the study or the intervention. So that's the other thing that's tricky, is that sometimes people.
Yeah, but if we were testing the new iPhones, like low stakes, but I feel like participating in studies like this are like actual stakes, and like it kind of matters for other people.
Well, and this happened also, Billy, for the early studies of looking at HIV PrEP in cisgender women. the studies look like they didn't work. But when they actually analyzed both hair, they analyzed hair samples also, as well as blood samples from women. And a lot of women said they were taking the medication, but they weren't, because they just wanted, they wanted to stay in the study. And there was a lot of other benefits for staying in the study. And that's HIV we're talking about. Talk about a high stakes infection. The other thing is that some people, if their partner sees doxycycline or sees that they're taking HIV PrEP, they get accused of being a whore, or, you know what I mean, or a slut, or they also get suspected of being a sex worker. So there's actual, physical harms that can come to some people if their partners suspect that they might be having sex with multiple partners, for example. So there are some real reasons there, but I feel really good about the data that we do have, that I feel very convinced that it works in, men who have sex with men and trans women. And I suspect that it would work for everyone, but I just don't, I suspect if you take it, it works. That's kind of, it's pretty simple, but I just don't have proof. But this drug, the pros of this drug is that it's incredibly cheap and it's generic. So there's not a lot of barriers cost-wise. It would be covered. Anyone who was insured would have it, covered in terms of insurance companies, don't have it's not like one of these drugs that costs $10,000 a dose or whatever, or for a course. So I think really anyone could have access to it. And people who don't have insurance, even if you pay cash, it's really not very expensive. You can get it. You can get 30 pills, with coupons like online through GoodRx, for example, for less than $20. So I think that it could be an intervention that is really exciting for lowering the risk of STIs, but we still have, some way to go with getting more information in more populations, because I want to be able to say everybody can take it,
If and when the CDC does make this official, obviously I think a lot of straight people and cis women would want to get on board with this. And, would there be any downside to them doing that?
I mean, there's not really a lot of downsides to taking doxycycline every once in a while. Here's the thing, is that what we don't know is, let's say you're taking, you're having condomless sex. And again, it could be oral, anal, or vaginal. Let's say you're having condomless sex and you're switching partners a lot and you're taking it almost every day, right? The question is there any long-term sort of downside to taking a lot of antibiotics? And that could be, as you know, Billy, you've heard probably of the microbiome, right? It's all the bacteria that make up our gut. And the worry is
I read about it all the time. It's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. Well,
New York Jets and the microbiome. Those are my two favorite things to read about.
You're such an intellectual guy. Well, and the thing is that what we don't know is if you take a crap load of antibiotics that you don't really need, and is it going to mess up your microbiome? And then is that going to make you more vulnerable to other, infections, for example? Is that going to cause you diarrhea? Is that going to cause, secondary effects that you don't want, right? And then the other thing is that if as a population, a lot of us are taking doxycycline, is that going to then make other organisms, other bacteria more resistant to doxycycline because there's more of it around in the environment? So we know that in the short term, at least for those populations, it really does work. It's very effective at reducing STIs. But long term, I don't know, is it going to cause other harms? My suspicions for that are not that high, but I still, I'm cautious about it. I don't give it to every single person who walks in the door and say, hey, throw the intervention at them. I think people who've had an STI in the last year, especially multiple STIs, that says to me, okay, you're playing in some higher, risk networks.
Yeah. Like with most things, moderation.
Yes.
We maybe all shouldn't jump collectively and at the same time on this new near daily use drug, but it's something that could be in your toolkit of sexual health. I
agree. And especially if you're playing in a network that you're really not used to being in and you don't know, if there's people that you're with regularly, you sort of know what's going on. And especially if you have agreements with people about how often you're testing and that kind of stuff, that's different. And then when you're jumping into a network where you don't know the folks, when people are having lots of concurrent partners with each other, where it could be sort of a high risk situation. Or if there are people you've slept with who are getting multiple STIs, this is a situation where you're like, okay, this, doxycycline as post-exposure prophylaxis or doxypep would be a good idea.
Yeah, like if you were deciding, I think for our anniversary, hun, we'll go to a glory hole together. Who knows how many cocks we don't know we're going to interact with. So like maybe we'll take some doxy afterwards to celebrate, right? Yeah, amazing.
I love that idea. Yes, that's the perfect situation.
And then one more quick question. I don't know if there have been studies about this, but would doxy interfere with birth control, which I know can be affected by antibiotic use?
Okay, so if you look in CDC's guidelines around that, they will say there is no interaction. If you look at the internet, don't read the internet. If you read the internet will say that in theory, doxy could reduce the efficacy of those birth control pills. They have estrogen and progesterone in them, and they, suppress people's ovulation. On the internet, it'll say, oh, doxy could interfere with your birth control, so you have to use something else while you're doing that. But I'll just let you know that right now, so in the draft guidelines that CDC put out, that are just going to be revised and made into final guidelines, they actually mentioned something about this, but the CDC actually put out their contraception guidelines to say that we don't need to worry about this. So you don't need to use a backup method if you're using doxycycline with, especially in this sort of occasional post-exposure way with a birth control pill. So don't worry about it.
Don't read the internet. Just listen to Dr. Ina Park.
And listen to the CDC. Yeah, the CDC doesn't agree with each other right now in this moment on this topic, but they're going to soon. So don't worry.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Park, thanks again for chatting with us. And I want to remind people that you have a book out. It's called Strange Bedfellows, Adventures in the Science, History, and Surprising Secrets of STDs. We talked about it on your episode, Ep 380 last year. And where can people go to find you, follow you, and check out your stuff?
They can come to Instagram to Ina Park MD. And I post about, I'll post about this intervention actually, as well as, other things related to sexual health. So come on down.
Fantastic. Thanks again. And why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
All right. Bye, everyone. Have good sex and have a good time.
Before I get to this week's guest, Fancy Feast, it's time for the Fan Whore Appreciation Moment. Yes, this is the part of the podcast where I like to give shout outs to members of my Fan Whore community on Patreon. Now, I just want to say thank you to a couple members who have supported the Man Whore podcast with their dollars in addition to their downloads on Patreon. These people are receiving a slew of great rewards in addition to their shout-outs. They're getting special Discord-related benefits. They're getting access to over 300 bonus episodes. They're joining us in our Telegram group chat, The Peep Show. They're seeing behind-the-scenes bonus content on my Patreon feed and more. So right now I want to say thank you so much to Elliot Cohen. I hope you enjoyed your peep into the Peep Show. Thanks for being a member. Thanks for supporting the show. And I want to give a shout out to Tyler Felsted. Thanks for showing your wallet's softer side by throwing me some shekels, buddy. Much appreciated. And you too can become a member and support the pod and receive a slew of great rewards. Enjoy the benefits of membership. Join the community at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast or download the Patreon app and you can find me on there. And now for this week's guest, Fancy Feast. She has a book of essays out now called Naked on Sex, Work, and Other Burlesques. Had a really fun time chatting with her on this one. We clicked well enough. We kind of went long, so there's a Patreon-only bonus episode coming out tomorrow. It's an extra 20 minutes of Fancy and I talking about sex parties and consent. Some really good stuff over there, but I think you're going to really enjoy this one too. We're talking about her childhood dreams of wanting to take her clothes off. We're talking about her catfishy, long-distance virtual relationship with some man, I think it was in England. And we're debating, she's kind of discussing, I'm doing my best to mostly listen, on the question, does burlesque count as sex work? Sounds like a great question for y'all to answer in the episode discussion channel in the Champagne Room. But for now, here's me and Fancy Feast.
We're going to find your inner daddy and how to develop that inner daddy for the purposes of...
Oh, sorry. Did you just catch me trying to learn how to be daddy? No big deal. I was just over at beducated.com, because as I'm aging and getting comfortable in this dad bod, apparently there are a lot of ladies who just want to call me daddy. And I don't know, not my thing, but I can learn how to do it. When there's something I don't know how to do, I go to beducated.com first. I see if they got a course on it. And a lot of times they do. It's like the Netflix. It's like the masterclass of adult sex ed. You want to learn some rope. You need to learn how to talk dirty. You want to learn how to give a lap dance. Or maybe we're going back to basics with BJ's, cunnilingus, and handy J's. Whatever you need to learn to get better in the bedroom, Beducated has got it for you. And beducated.com is going to help you level up your love life for 50% off an annual pass. That's wild. 50% off for a whole year and access to over 100 video courses. Courses like learn how to squirt, strengthening your core and pelvic floor, erotic spanking, yoni massage, and a complete guide to butt pleasure. Click the link at the top of the schnotes. Yes, you can technically use promo code manwhore at checkout, but they would really like if you click the link at the top of the schnotes. I'm not a marketing expert, but it's important, I am told. Click the link, top of the schnotes, sign up for an annual pass, or hey, use that link to sign up for a 1-day free trial and you can test the whole place out. Even then, Beducated comes with a 14-day money-back guarantee. So I don't know what you're waiting for. Click the link, top of the schnotes, or visit beducated.com and use promo code manwhore. Beducated. It's spelled like educated, but with a B, because, it's for stuff in the bedroom. Hey.
I went to film school. I did audio editing, so I know what it's like when you get 2 frames or whatever to cut in, or half a second. It sucks. So I'll give you a nice long pause before I go, well, that was inappropriate, and then restate myself.
Oh no, I would love for you to be accidentally inappropriate.
No,
that's
would.
where the magic is.
I bet you would.
Then you'd be brought down to my level, and then that's great. We love that.
Well, I'm here for a character assassination, so fire away.
Well, it is fun, in kind of more in the more progressive or sex positive or more liberal circles. Well, this is gonna be my cancellation. Then they'll say the thing, and then it's so
benign.
It's benign. But within that world, fucking there will be fights.
Absolutely.
But you could ask 20 people on the street, maybe one knows about that very niche situation where they're like, no, you don't understand. We're calling it this, and then no, we're calling it this, and they're like, I didn't even know any of that existed.
I have my own cancellation fears about the book, actually.
Oh, yeah?
I think there's cancelable information in there. So, it's probably going to be something that I didn't foresee, because that's often how it is. It, exists in the spots that we're not aware of. Uh-huh. But there is some stuff that when I wrote it, I was like, all right.
What's an example of that?
I think there could be some beef about my legitimacy writing about sex work. Even though I've done it, I think there's sometimes a hierarchy, or there's a sense of I'm not a lifer, or because I have another job that it doesn't count. I'm more of a hobbyist or a voyeur in that world, rather than a meaningful, legitimized participant. There's a lot of infighting about that sort of stuff in the sex worker community, because it's a hard life, really disenfranchised people, So I was the essay about my phone sex client, I was this feels deeply cancelable.
What? No, that's the thing. It's one, you're worried about getting yelled at by the people who don't even have enough power to cancel. And it's not a thing where you're saying something like that. If anything, it would be the fact that you did phone sex at all by the mainstream. That's who would be look at you in a weird way, if anything.
I can see that, but I don't care about the opinions of lay people. I do deeply care about the opinions of sex workers.
Is there worry about being kind of cast out of already I don't want to, niche is not the right word and the right one's not coming to me, but like marginalized, smaller, more specific community spaces. And then if you don't feel like you fit in with the mainstream and you're kicked out of the space where you did feel like you fit in and now you don't fit anywhere, is that a concern that you have?
I'm not quite as navel-gazy as that, but I do get it. I think it's more like knowing that that sex working communities are already underrepresented in media, and then the ones who are overly visible are like privileged white people, and I'm she, you know what I mean? So being aware that I'm adding to the canon just based on my identity in a way that isn't necessarily like the most needed.
But even the way you answer that right now, I assume that there's some sort of disclaimer in the book. I would imagine where you like almost like acknowledge like, by the way, like I know this about me, but this is my real life experience. Yeah,
absolutely. And also that doesn't get me off the hook. So like it wasn't going to be enough for me to not write something that felt really important. But it's in there. It was like, as I was writing that essay, that was in my head.
Yeah. It's also part of why, like, there's also is one's identity what one does or how someone identifies, like, because one's done sex work, like, are you a sex worker? Technically, yes, or have been, yes. But like, I don't make sex work a part of like my identity just because I've done X and Y and Z. Like I've done things but I try not to make that my identity. Like if we have to go with those words, like I'm a comedian, I'm a podcaster.
Right.
I have done sex work, but I don't like go around calling myself a sex worker. If that makes sense.
That's kind of how I feel as well. I mean, I think under capitalism, we're all like required to make our work part of our identities in one way or another. But it's not something that's central to my identity because the way that sex workers are marginalized is not the danger that I'm in. Yeah. So it feels like incorrect to adopt the struggle that's not mine.
Doesn't feel a little bit sad though that like, because like under capitalism, like your profession becomes kind of your identity. There's people who like an accountant has to be like their identity. Oof.
Poor fuckers.
Poor fuckers. All that khaki, you know? It's so sad. But we're here right now with Fancy Feast. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Fancy Feast, you're a burlesque performer among many other. I don't want to put too many profession identities onto you.
It's all I've got.
But by the way, I have to ask what the name, what's that about?
So Fancy Feast is a name that I was given. So it's not one that I was clever enough to come up with. So I had a friend who was coming up with a stage name for herself, and she had written a list of potential ones. And she called me because she's like, I really like this name, but it's not a name for a skinny girl. And she was. So she's like, do you want it? And I love that it's each word, like fancy implies this sort of like glamour, opulence. Feast is about this abundance, but then you put them together and it's this like really inferior, bodega cat food. So the tension between the sublime and the abject is something that I play a lot with in my work. So it really has fit as a name for me.
Did you ever use other burlesque names before that?
Very briefly in college, I tried being Boobs Radley. I thought that was cute, but
I like it.
There's a Boobs Radley in every town. I learned.
Is that like burlesque hack?
It is. It is.
It's like that's already out there.
Yeah. So had to sunset that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And with the book, was there anything else in there that you're like worried about before we go into probably more fun, less stressful topics?
I'm worried about everything. I'm worried about, I'm a little worried about being doxxed. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I know that like when women are visible in some ways, or when like fat women or people who don't hate themselves, whatever, like that there's always potential danger there. But no, most of the things in the book, they needed to be included in order for the book to make sense. Mm-hmm. So if people have beef with it, they're permitted their beef. Like it's public now. People can be upset about it.
Yeah. Okay. Let them be upset. And whether it's from one side or the other.
Well, yeah, in my book proposal, so it's like a marketing document basically trying to sell the book to the publisher. And part of it was like, I bet, the sort of alt-right is going to hate this book and therefore it may sell more units. So it's like one has to be aware of like who's going to hate you and if that can push more press or what.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
You're like, yeah, they can hate me with their credit cards. Yeah.
Yeah. If they want to like buy it and burn it, they're still buying it.
You're like, I only support book burning of my book.
My thought was if there is going to be like the Great Inferno, my title needs to be in there too.
Yeah. It's like we have like a minimum sell through we're trying to hit. So can we please?
1 box, 2 boxes. Like, what can I, how many units?
Fancy feast. You're out here like making like alt handles, pretending to be alt-right to start the campaign against you.
Yeah, this fat bitch. Look at this. How dare she? Yeah.
You could be the who's the Ray Epps. You could be the Ray Epps of your book or whatever.
I don't know who that is, and I'm not asking.
That's the guy that like a lot of the Jan 6 people like they're trying to say, no, he was FBI and he started the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, maybe he wants to blurb the book.
So you've been doing burlesque a long time, but you've dreamed of burlesque even longer.
Always.
Tell us about your dreams as a young gal wanting to take your clothes off for a living. And
yeah, I feel like I've answered more questions about my childhood in this press tour than I'm used to.
when you say I was a young lass and I wanted to strip when I grew up, it will beg questions.
Fair. I think there's this idea that like no young girl grows up dreaming of wanting to become a stripper. And it's like, no, I did. I always did. The early sort of roots were Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I thought she was just the coolest person ever. Or like Nomi Malone from Showgirls. Like I would watch that late at night, sort of censored on VH1. That just like bad girls and like showgirls were really fascinating to me as characters. Like the idea of that sort of vampy persona was so much more interesting than heroines or ingenues. So I always wanted to be a bad girl, and I was always loose in my hips in dance class. So I feel like one sort of followed the other.
So like, how old do you think you are when you are going like, and you whatever it is, the version of I guess stripping that you are? How old are you when you are envisioning this? And do you also understand like what it was that you wanted? Like, were you chasing a vibe or like a profession?
I was chasing a vibe.
Okay.
I think it was pre-professional because I was 3 or 4 years old.
The face I just made.
Yeah, I was like, I saw pictures of myself. You know the like when you go on a cruise and they have sort of like a little like activity jail for the children, so the parents can like drink and gamble.
Yeah.
So in my little activity jail, we were doing some sort of musical review. And we got to like pick our costumes. And as like a 3 or 4 year old, I was like, it's going to be my 2-piece swimsuit because I really liked it. And I put on like an absurd amount of like sort of showgirl makeup. And there's this picture of me and with all the other little girls, and they're all standing in a line being adorable. And I have like my hand on my hip, my leg cocked, you know, throwing my head back with my lipstick. And I was like, this is it. This is who it's been.
This is what I want to be.
It's a forever thing.
And did you take steps to kind of towards that? Were you in taking certain content media to like, you know, like you referenced Showgirls and Jessica Rabbit, like did you have certain posters in the room or?
I didn't. I had a poster of a raccoon in my room. So,
well, okay.
Yeah, no luck there. But I would like listen to the Chicago soundtrack, and I was obsessed with Elvira, and I would listen to her like comedy albums and watch her movies.
She has comedy albums?
Yeah, or she did like, I know she did like a couple of songs. There was like a Halloween compilation that she had a song for, and I used to just like dance to it in my friend's basement all the time. Yeah, and then when the Spice Girls happened, Ginger Spice like had a very sort of sexy persona and had taken nude photos, and I printed them out from my parents' like family computer and had them in a notebook.
After 3.5 hours of them downloading line by line by line.
The most pixelated shit ever. But I just thought it was really cool. I thought she was really beautiful. The way that she was performing gender, or the way that sex workers perform femininity, felt more in line with what I wanted, because it had this sort of intoxicating, exaggerated form to it that like it was not intended to be sort of how do I want to say this? It wasn't intended to be innate. It was this idea of like a performance. And that's always been how I experience my gender. So through exaggerated performance. So that was something that I wanted for myself. And I thought being sexy was very powerful.
You don't feel like you do femininity day to day. That's like for the stage.
You have to pay for it. Yeah. Like if you want me to be high femme, like it's going to be money. Like,
because you don't want to be high femme in your day to day is what I'm getting at.
Oh, it's so much work.
Is this like about where you want to be at? Like what I'm experiencing right now?
Yeah. This is sort of like, I would say like, what did we call this? Like a liberal arts cantor. I feel like that's what you're gonna get day to day. I mean, if I'm trying to fuck, or if I'm like, yeah, like if I have a
I love the way you like wound up your body to say fuck. If I want to, and then like your neck cocked, but then like your head goes forward with the fuck, and then you just like kept talking.
Yeah, or like if I want to make sure I'm going to have a seat on the subway, then sure. I can do high femme. But generally speaking, like I will put a big bag over my body and call it a day.
It's a tool for you.
It's a tool.
Use.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't know what that does. And since I stopped wearing the cans like, I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago, because when I started talking to the porn stars, they didn't want to wear the cans because the hair's done.
Absolutely.
So I was like, well, if you're not wearing them, I'm not going to wear them because I just look like a dork in front of you. So I'm going to take these off. But then sometimes I'm like, oh shit, if something happens inside of this piece of machine, I don't find out till it's plugged into the web. Like there have been a couple times in very specific parts of New York City where this, or like it, I've read online, it's the wire. If you have like a weak XLR, it sometimes can catch like AM frequencies. And so, but it's always like a fucking demonizing sermon. And so I like interviewed a dominatrix once where like we still had the headphones on, but we could hear, and the blood of the sinners will rain down upon thee. And I was like, I think he's talking about us.
That's so hot.
Would you say you were always kind of like the mature for your age one?
Yes.
You had this mature vibe goal at 4, and beyond, right? And so like, were you kind of like a precocious youngster, like say with dating? Were you the second grader who like always had a boyfriend? Or
no, I didn't date for a really long time, but I did have a lot of, I guess, unearned maturity. Like in 3rd grade, I remember I made a diorama of Edgar Allan Poe's A Cask of Amontillado, the short story where, the guy walls up the other guy in the catacombs. Yeah. Yeah. So that
you were that girl in grade school.
Yes, I was.
Where you go up and you proudly present your project, and then everyone's just staring at you, terrified, and like the teacher's soft, like trying to clap enthusiastically. Give it up for Fancy. Give it up for Fancy. And all the kids are just like, I need to call my mom.
Well, fortunately, I was a spooky kid, but I had social skills, thank God. So I was always like, I was loved if not understood. But the maturity didn't meant that I had a lot of friends and meant that I was a good sort of go-to for advice, but I was doing a lot of advising, but not a lot of living that life. And part of it is that like, if you're a 6th grader, the appropriate people to date are 6th graders and the inappropriate people are adults. Oh, and no. You know what I mean? And I was like, I was a sexually precocious kid who was interested in adults, which is like not the vibe.
Yeah.
But like I was on the internet chatting with older men, like AIM was a thing, so I was. The
AOL chat room where like the lesbian chat room where it was just a bunch of men pretending to be lesbians trading porn with each other.
There's something really sweet about that actually, now thinking about what a nightmare the internet has turned into. But back in the day when you could actually be whoever you wanted to be, I thought it was like a really beautiful way to try on a different identity.
Yeah. What identities did you try on?
Okay. So I was 27 when I was 12. And I gave myself kind of a normcore life because I thought that would allow me to have the most verisimilitude. So I like worked in an office. I had a strained relationship with my boss.
You knew that these details mattered.
I did.
Wow.
Oh no. And I feel really bad for the people that I was talking to because I was talking to some people who were verified adults and I did not mean to get them in a sort of catfish scenario like that, but I was just really sick of being in middle school. Yeah, and my mom found out, which was not ideal. Uh-oh. So I got in trouble.
How did she find out?
Okay. So one of them that I was really into was in England, and I didn't know how international phone calls were billed. So
For the children listening, once upon a time, you could be on the phone or the internet.
yes, exactly. And so I had run up a $1,000 phone bill.
Fancy.
I told you, I've been a bad girl.
It's such a bad girl.
So bad.
You were practicing your femdom skills at such a young age.
I was the true pay pigs were my parents.
Please put that on a t-shirt. Parents are the true pay pigs. And did your mom like confront this man?
Yes. But he didn't know that I was a child.
Sure.
So it was like a really horrifying thing for him as well. And then because he was like nice and very like clearly not a pedophile or a dangerous man, my mother and he like chatted amiably for a while, like after she had verified that he wasn't scary, and had like actually permitted for our communication to continue. But he voluntarily decided that was not the vibe.
Nah, because like now what are we going to talk about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can still talk about Edgar Allan Poe. He's like, it's just not the same.
Not the same.
It's not the same. So how long has this man and your mom been married? No, okay. What a meet cute that could have been.
God, I wish him well. I like really, now that I look back on it, it is something that like, if there is such a thing as like weighing my sins in heaven, I feel like someone's going to have something to say about.
Did you ever like go find him like online, like in adulthood to be like, hi, I was that 12-year-old or whatever?
When I went to England,
I'm bounced with excitement that there's maybe an answer to this one.
Yes, I mean, thank you for asking. Yeah, I went during my like Euro trip, sort of post high school, so like technically legal, but not so far out of my adolescence.
Yeah.
And I had reached out. I never got a response, and I think that was really the right call. But I still had an email address that didn't bounce back at the time.
Wow. So you were forming personalities. You had these mature goals, and then like when you're an adult, you can actually start to realize them. So when did you first try to realize this vibe that you wanted to put out into the world?
So my college had sort of an annual sex themed dance event on campus, and there would be like an educational component and then kind of just like an orgy.
Okay.
I went to a very cool college.
Would you? Okay, you can't say probably, but yeah. Okay.
But the people who know very well. And so
that feels so like Holyoke. That feels very Hollyoke-y.
We're in the right territory.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I think I dated someone who played rugby for your school. Okay.
We'll talk off tape. So it was a time to dress up in a sort of sexy way and be perceived in that manner as well. So I remember like my little outfit with my fishnets and the corset that I had gotten from some like historical reenactment website. I was doing my best. I didn't know. And the thrill of being sort of publicly visible in a sexual way was really exciting. I mean, I guess if you trace it back, I was like testing my limits as jailbait, you know, like for attention at the mall. But I feel like that's a little more scattershot than having that sort of intention.
And how did it feel to like be viewed? Like what was you were on a stage, right?
I was you
just at this party?
At the event, yeah.
And how did it feel to like see eyes on you?
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this is right.
Appropriately aged eyes on you. How did that feel?
I wasn't into anybody. I wanted to fuck my professors.
Oh my God. Fucking. I'm afraid to ask who you're into now. You'd be like, it's like sometimes I go to a nursing home and I'm just seeing like who has a last wish.
No, I've settled into my demographic now. I think like my desire is now sort of appropriately matched to my tax bracket or my age or whatever.
Yeah. And in college, like when you're feeling that and you're being able to put this vibe out there, like are you dating? Like, and how is that going? Did you know you were poly and queer then?
No.
No.
I did not. I did most of my dating outside of my college. So like during vacations over the summer, because I was interested in older guys, again, hard to find on campus. So I would have my sort of shore leave, when I wasn't at school. And then at school, I would have these sort of brief moments of deep longing that didn't really materialize. But like, I ended up having sex with a bunch of people from my college after graduating. Like, I've had more sex with people who went to my college since than during.
And when did you start dabbling in the sex work?
So I've been in the sex industry for a long time. When I graduated from college, it was sort of at a really bad point in the financial crisis. So I applied to a bunch of jobs, but I had like a French film theory degree, which, put me at the very bottom of what was desired as like an employee. So 2 places had called me back for an interview. I applied to maybe like 30, 40 places. And it was a sex toy store and a ghost tour company. And the ghost tour company I figured was seasonal work. So I went with the sex toy store. So that was my first foray in the sex industry. That was not sex work. That was retail work. But it connected me to a lot of, like, my manager was a pro dom. Because, retail wages are rough. So it was a way of getting involved with like queer, sex positive, non-monogamous communities, kinky people, people who became like my dearest friends.
Was that a world you'd already been like reading about, knew about much, or were you exploding into a whole new world?
It was not new to me because I'd sort of been, as you said, I'd been like the sex friend. I'd been the one to answer lots of questions about sexuality, and I was the person that a lot of the kids in my high school would come out to. So it had always been sort of in my wheelhouse. This has like been my community. I hadn't been able to walk into one that was already created. Okay.
So when do you go from like just working at a sex toy shop to getting a little bit more hands-on in that space?
Let's see. So a couple months into working retail at the sex toy store, I was hired to pass out safer sex supplies at an orgy. And so again, it's like one of these things, it's like at the very margin of like what some people might consider sex work and some people don't. And then I guess I was trying to find a sugar daddy. And I guess that was the first more formal sex work that I did just to try to supplement my retail income.
And you found one?
Yeah. So I had a couple of false starts, and that was an essay that didn't make it into the book. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't write about him. I didn't feel ready to. I had a guy who he had a very literary Craigslist post, and this is back when Craigslist was fun.
R.I.P.
I know.
That was my jam.
There's so much weird, kooky shit on there. I loved it.
20% of my career is built on the fact that like I was very active on Craigslist.
I miss it. And so he like made some allusion to Nabokov and was like looking for a sugar baby, and I responded, and we went out and we had like a really nice night. He took me to a steakhouse, and then he had like told me that I was too fat. But he was like, I would love to be friends and hang out. And I was like, oof. So yeah, so he paid me for that, for having dinner with him. And I bought my first latex dress with that money.
Oh. Yeah.
But then, in line at the bathroom of a sex party, I met the person who became my sugar daddy, in a much more sort of fun, organic way.
And how does that organically happen? Because that sounds like the holy grail. This sounds like it just sounds like what do they call it when the stories are urban legend? That's what it is.
Some too good to be true
shit. My brain is not working out right now. But it sounds like urban legend. It sounds like lore to be, I was in line at a sex party bathroom, and then next thing I know, I've got, a monthly allowance.
Well, okay, if you want me to add some like real pretension fuel to the fire.
Yeah, it's an hour long ish, chat. You're welcome to explore the space.
I identified the musical piece that the notation of was this person's tattoo. Like it was, I guess it's like John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which is,
sure.
Yeah. I think that's who did it. I don't know. But it's a musical piece, like an orchestral piece that's all rests. Like there is no actual music. So it's just the orchestra sits there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds while the conductor conducts. It's like a conceptual piece. So
no.
So what?
No.
Well,
no.
It's art.
No.
So
no. No, that's like when I went to the MoMA, and there was, and it's the only time I went to the MoMA because I got so angry. I was like, the chick I was with had to hold my hand because there was a blank white canvas, and that was it. And like in my head, I thought some dude got paid like tens of thousands of dollars for just putting primer on this. No.
I mean, Elon Musk gets paid for like his parents having an emerald mine, so I feel more okay with.
I mean, it's fine if they want to get paid for the thing. I'm just like, I'm not calling that art. No. I mean, I'll call what the conductor's doing maybe exercise, because it sounds like he's very busy for no reason. But you know,
well, you sound like my dad, and I mean that in a loving way. Because I remember taking my dad to an art museum, and he rated everything A for art or B for bad. He had that binary, so like I get it, like I understand.
It's like, do chomp, do no, do no.
Yeah, ceci n'est pas une piece of art. But yeah, no, I clocked the tattoo, and that was I was the most interesting person in line for the bathroom at the orgy after that. So then we were in contact, and this person, we stayed in touch over email, and then they like confessed to me that they had a financial fetish, like that it was hot for them, the idea of like spoiling some pretty young thing, and like, yeah, just throwing a lot of money and buying a lot of lingerie at this person. And I was like, oh, I can be that person.
Had you heard of this type of thing before?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
And like what kind of monthly allowance were we getting?
It wasn't. We didn't do a monthly.
Okay.
This was sort of like when we would see each other, I would walk away with like an envelope of cash and other sundries.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was very informal. I didn't set a sort of allowance because that also wasn't part of what was hot for them. It was just like a.
I loosely take care of you rather than like this like strict arrangement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That it's like the sort of benevolence of like, here's how much my good little whore gets this time. You know?
And how long did that relationship last?
So the formal relationship lasted maybe like a year or something. And then it developed into like just a fondness and into sort of more of a friendship. And then they transitioned, and then it wasn't sort of the gendered relationship anymore. And you know, they came to my birthday and stuff, and we chat. Was
the transition when the financial part got out, or when it became, or was it before that first turn you described?
So the money dried out first, and then we were friends, and then they went through their gender journey, you know, some years subsequently.
Yeah. And then did you keep trying the sugar baby after that? Because like today, the market seems fucked.
Right, exactly. No, my financial circumstances had changed at that point, and there were more demands on my time. Mm-hmm. So like performing was really picking up and had taken on, it was like about a half to a third of my income. So I was able to just sort of lean in that way instead.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now I know you talk about this in the book. The concept, I actually had not heard this as a question before, because I don't think I've considered it to be, but I didn't even know that this was like a debate, but that concept of like, is burlesque sex work? And I think we would think of strippers, okay, that's clearly sex work, right? But burlesque is not so simply stripping. Just like the idea is like, I do see stripping like at a strip club so different than a burlesque act. And so yesterday when that was like even posed as a question, I was like, oh, interesting. So I guess, do you consider burlesque sex work? And then also, and if not, why do some people do?
Well, so first I want to push back on the idea that burlesque is more of an art form than stripping.
I showed up here praying you'd put, I was just like, I very much expect this person to push back hard at me. In fact, if I don't get kicked out of her apartment midway through the interview, like I didn't do my job. No,
absolutely.
Like when I texted you, I expected you. I thought you might text back. No, totally fine. I was like, yeah, but I listened to an interview with you, and it sounded like you have like very minimal patience for men. So I wanted to apologize for being a little late.
I'm not gonna top you if that's the
No, but please push.
So I've seen some really lazy, shitty burlesque, and I've seen a lot of incredible stripping. Mm-hmm. And I've also seen performers who work in both milieus, and people who like, you know, or do burlesque on the weekends but work at the club during the week or whatever, and do the same act or similar kinds of acts. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's as much of a binary. And I also think, I don't know if you've ever have you been to the strip clubs in Portland?
I went once, but like I'm not a strip club guy. I think
Okay.
I've been to a strip club for non-business purposes like 2 or 3 times in my life.
Sure.
Every other time it's like a publicist said, my girl's dancing there and I'm not even paying attention because I'm enjoying the free drink. So like strip clubs, I'm just not a strip club guy.
Fair.
But I do hear Portland is like a wild stripper scene.
It's the best. And I saw the most like creative artistic stripping that I think I've ever seen in my life at a strip club called Mary's, where there isn't even a DJ. There's just a jukebox next to the stage, which is like 3 feet by 3 feet. It's so cool. So in terms of the distinction, I think some people would think of their burlesque as sex work. Some people don't. Generally speaking, I don't. I think of it as it's more like performance arty. We tend to be in like bar and theater spaces. We're beholden to producers rather than to customers or clients. Generally, there are times where we'll be asked to go dance, and then we're like, dancing for tips, and that feels maybe more aligned with things that people would consider sex work.
Yeah.
But I just never want that distinction to be used as like a badge of I'm cool, I'm a badass, like I'm a sex worker.
For you're saying the burlesque girls, you don't think burlesque girls should go wear that badge because they do burlesque?
Right. That like if that's the way that you identify, that it's not coming from a place of like, because I want to be part of this like cool kids club, but more because there is a politic related to how sexualized labor is viewed and treated. And that if so it's like yes, no, sometimes. Like I think there's not one right answer, and that it is conditional. Like there are times where the work that I've done feels more aligned with the sex work that I've done, and times where I'm just like I feel very clearly in a more sort of theatrical persona. But historically, there wasn't a difference. Like before strip clubs really became a thing in the 30s, 40s, 50s, you would go to the burlesque house, and that's where they had comedians and sideshow performers, and they would do skits, and then there would be like a stripping girl, a dancing girl. And those performers were also often performing to sell their wares in the way that like a sex worker is going to do, or like a stripper is going to do like a stage show and then sell dances afterwards.
Yeah.
So a lot of the burlesque queens would also then like would strip and then sell extras, like do additional services.
But so back then were kind of all the strippers a little burlesque in that like because you had to dress it up a bit, otherwise you can't just take your clothes off, that would be obscene. We got to give it artistic value. Like was that the mentality 100 years ago?
I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure.
Okay, damn, okay.
I can't say what the mentality was, but that there just wasn't a difference. Like G-strings weren't a thing for a while.
If you took your tits out and accepted money, you were in the same bucket regardless what niche word you want to call it.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right. And so then there was a sort of bifurcation when strip clubs became its own sort of distinct thing, and burlesque kind of went away as an art form for several decades. Like the rise of the strip club in the 70s and 80s closed a lot of the burlesque houses, which were so much more expensive to run. Like having all of these extravagant costumes, having to pay like all of the comedians or whatever. Right. So it was just a different model. And then there was a burlesque resurgence in the late 90s and early 2000s that sort of reconnected with the roots of burlesque performance, like the physical sort of theatricality of it.
That late?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there were some people doing it in the 80s a little bit.
But it wasn't like a thing.
It wasn't a thing. And it wasn't until the internet that people really found each other. So it was like in these like MSN groups or like on Yahoo or LiveJournal where people were like,
lady, you've been taking me back today. Like feels good. I feel warmth in my shoulders right now.
Good internet was good. This is what I'm saying.
What brought burlesque back into the mainstream?
I would say there was this group of people who were there who like found each other on the internet through their interests in classic burlesque of the like 30s, 40s, 50s. So it was sort of like a little fandom, and wanting to preserve the memories, the artifacts, wanting to connect with those performers who had been part of the heyday, as well as reinventing the genre in a sort of more riot girl, like punk rock kind of way. So when there was a lot of emphasis on satire and politics and like punk and DIY, that those two things got really connected. So there were several performers in New York who found each other and started making it more of a thing.
Okay. And so to bring back to the and just like kind of like bring back to the sex work question, like why is it that some people feel strongly that it is?
I know people who have lost their jobs, like teachers who are not allowed to teach in schools anymore because their burlesque careers were found out by a parent or things like that. And that feels connected to the kind of stigma that is specific to sex working communities. So I think those folks have a lot of legitimacy around like how they would identify. And I think for some people, there's this idea that if you are stripping in any way, if you take your clothes off, if people get horny as a result of the thing you do, then you're a sex worker.
Okay.
So I guess they're entitled to their opinion. It's just not the one I share.
Sure. All right. I have so yeah. All right. In our Discord chat. Wow. Okay, Billy. Words. I've done this before. So in our Discord server, the Champagne Room, we have a patron-only channel called Ask the Guests. All my Patreon members, if they want to ask a question to the upcoming guests, they can ask them. And so if it's a great question, I wish it was mine. If it's a bad question, not my idea.
Blame the Champagne Room.
Absolutely. So Tracy wants to know. I had two questions. One, what's the craziest proposition you've gotten by an audience member?
The craziest proposition I've ever gotten by an audience member. Let me think. Well, what I consider crazy is when people ask me to work for free. Like, I don't know if that's going to be as satisfying. Like, I wish there was somebody who's like, oh, could you perform at my like kid's bris or something like that? I haven't done that one.
Can you slowly rip the foreskin off your shoulder? It's like a shawl, but like looks like foreskin.
I have a friend who has a Moyle act, so we could make it work.
Wow.
Yeah, but no, it's not. Okay, so this isn't my story, but I feel like my answer is not satisfying, so I'm going to give you someone else's.
But I want to go back to your answer because it's such a real one, but let's do this fun one first.
Okay, great. So I have friends who are in a troupe, and they were hired to perform at this dude's sex party that he was throwing, I think in like New Mexico somewhere. That is not crazy. But the day before, or like the sort of afternoon before the orgy, he went out into the desert and did a bunch of peyote and died. And so at some point, the like wife of this late gentleman called the troupe to be like, hey, so this happened. So the orgy's off, but if you're going to be in town for the next couple of days, we would love to have you perform at the memorial. And they were sadly on tour, so they were going to be leaving the state shortly, so they couldn't do it. But they were like, oh, if we performed at like a wake or whatever that would be something.
That'd been fucking something.
Yeah.
But on the topic of like people want to perform for free, there is something where, and especially I think if it's done via the internet and it's not like we sat at a table to work out a deal, I think people like think they're shopping on Amazon or haggling on Craigslist for an item like this bottle or this table, and they forget there's like people working.
For me, the thing that drives me crazy is when it's like corporate is asking me to do something for free. The idea that like I would do some sort of I don't know what, like Roaring 20s themed event or whatever, and they're like, we don't have a budget to pay you, but we think your performance is great and we'd love to have you. It would be great exposure, that kind of thing. And I'm like, you pay your CEO like $50 million a year, like fuck you.
How about he just treats the office to a burlesque show?
Yeah, exactly. Like have his jet come pick me up and we can talk. Yeah, I find that to be a crazy request.
One question I had before we go, I don't normally write questions before, but I did have this one on the train. I was like, because it probably has a colorful answer. Can you describe your favorite burlesque act you've seen?
Oh, yes.
Of course.
Absolutely. So Matt Frazier and Julie Atlas Muse have a duet to Elvis Presley's American Trilogy. I don't know if you're familiar with these people.
You just said a lot of words except for Elvis that I did not know.
Okay, great. So it's like a latter-day Elvis song. And Matt Frazier is an incredible performer, an amazing MC. He was in a season of American Horror Story, the one that was set in the carnival sideshow. Whatever.
Okay, yeah. Wait, who's in the carnival sideshow?
He was Paul, the seal boy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of the few ones I watched. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. And so he's like out on stage fully nude except for like a little tuxedo jacket. And American Trilogy, the song is the one where Elvis is singing like glory, glory, hallelujah. You know? And it's just this so then Julie dances on stage and is fully naked and is like doing a lot of very sort of like Martha Graham, like very expressive contemporary dance, fully naked, and then goes behind Matt and then between his legs and sort of car washes herself, teabags, herself with his enormous dick and balls.
Wait, what?
With her face, like she's just like
Wait, is his dick and balls out?
Yeah, he's full nude except for a tuxedo jacket.
Oh, well, oh yeah, okay.
So there's no striptease in this act. Like they're just naked.
Okay.
At least I don't think there is. I haven't seen it in a couple years. And then she like does a full nude headstand and spreads her legs. And I don't remember if he actually inserts his dick in or if he just kind of flops it out on her pussy while singing this sort of like patriotic American song. And that is my favorite burlesque act.
Where did you see that?
I've seen it a number of times.
Oh, okay.
It travels well.
Gotcha.
Costume is very small.
Well, people, I guess, look out for that.
Yeah.
And again, Fancy, you have a book that is out. Where can people go find it, follow it? Tell us the name of it.
Oh, yeah. So my book is called Naked on Sex, Work, and Other Burlesques. It's going to be available wherever books are sold. So bookshop.org is where I'm urging people to go if they're buying online. Go to your local bookstore. Amazon if you're a dirty birdie.
Dirty bird who can't wait another 1 to 2 days of shipping.
Yeah, just chill out.
Yeah. When did you ever need a book now? When did you ever needed 2 days and you can wait 3 to 4
for the bonfire.
For the bonfire. Oh yeah, when all the alt-right dudes are just like, we're in a rush because we have a burning on Thursday. It's Monday and sometimes the weather. So just we want to make sure we have it in time.
Exactly. And then you can follow me on Instagram at Fancy Feast Burlesque, all one word. I used to talk about Twitter, but Twitter's now just like a little nightmare hole. So we're gonna pretend it doesn't exist.
Fantastic. Well, Fancy, thanks so much for chatting with me. This was very fun. It was nice to get to know you. And I'm a little disappointed I didn't get kicked out, but it's
you can
okay.
still leave. I mean, that's fine.
I did plan to leave. I promise. Was going to do that. But for now, why don't you go But for now, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody? Wow, what is COVID fog brain?
Hell yeah!
Is I haven't had it in like a year and a half, and yet, woo. Okay, we're gonna
run that back.
We're gonna close it strong. Is this getting edited out? God no. Let's go. We're gonna close it strong together. Okay, Fancy. Thanks so much for chatting with us. This was great. And why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody? I got it. I made it.
This was an absolute pleasure. Goodbye, everybody.
If you want to share your thoughts on this week's show, the best place to do that is in the episode discussion channel in our Discord server, The Champagne Room. Sounds like a great question to start with if you want to is, do you think burlesque counts as sex work? And if you want to shoot me an email, maybe you want to go a little longer, maybe you want to share a bit more privately, you can send your thoughts, your comments, your questions, your titty pictures, with or without pasties on them, to manwhorepod@gmail.com. There's something about faux requesting titty pictures that felt more cheeky and boyish when I was 26, 27, and now feels, I don't know, uncomfy at 34. It's like I'm not actually asking for them. I feel like that would be cringy. I'm doing it tongue in cheek, but also like I'll look at them if they're sent. As opposed to your boner pictures, if you send me a picture of your boner, it better say my name on it in Sharpie. Anyways, Shout out to the Peep Show. Y'all have been popping off, and welcome to a lot of the new members in there. I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing. If you've joined recently, it's been a couple of pretty horny weekends in the Peep Show. Very proud of the crew. Of course, you can gain access to the Peep Show, as well as over 300 bonus episodes by supporting the Man Whore Podcast on Patreon. I'm about to play a teaser of my bonus episode with Fancy. So if you haven't ended, if you haven't skipped forward just yet, stay tuned. Hold on just a few more seconds before you get some more content. But I do have to remind everyone that you can become a member today, support the pod you love at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Another great way to support the pod is to buy your books through my bookshop.org link, also in the schnotes. I get a cut for every book sold through that link, and a great book to get right now is Naked on Sex, Work, and Other Burlesques by Fancy Feast. Okay, everybody, I got to put this thing down and edit everything in time to go to a comedian's birthday party tonight because Billy is out of a depressive hole and trying to be social again. Hey, I'm going to stay for at least 1 hour and 5 minutes. And if I want to go after that, I am allowed to, so long as I've shaken at least 3 to 5 hands. Some people have fitness goals when they go to a gym. I have social goals when I go to a party. And with that, enjoy the teaser. Enjoy some titties somewhere in your life. Even if you're a gay man and those titties are really just pecs or your friend's non-sexual titties. However, just like, I just think titties are great for everybody. So enjoy them wherever you can get them. Stay slutty.
So I had this guy like tied to my bed and blindfolded, and he had headphones on, and I was playing That's the Way It Is by Celine Dion on repeat for a couple of hours while I edged him, and with the hopes that it would get ingrained in his sexual response, and I wouldn't let him come unless he was singing it. And this is when I was living with like 4 other people, so I'm sorry to my roommates. But after it, we were doing our little postmortem, and he's like, I don't think it worked. Like, I just kind of tuned out the song after a while, and I was so disappointed. I was like trying to be a good, a hardcore top or whatever. And then he sent me a text like a week later saying that he had downloaded it off of iTunes and was jerking off to it.
Shopping for books at bookshop.org avoids the guilt of using sites like on and Bulls. Whether you're searching for novels, memoirs, or books about butts, bookshop.org has nearly every title you can think of. And when you shop at mybookshop.org link, you're not only helping independent bookstores. A portion of every sale comes back to support the Man Whore Podcast. Visit manwhorepod.com/bookshop. Fill your cart with titles like The Ethical Slut and The Body Keeps the Score. Again, click the link in the schnotes or go to manwhorepod.com/bookshop.